In this video, I'm going to take a look back at Star Trek First Contact, the 8th movie in the theatrical Star Trek movie franchise, and the second to feature the cast of The Next Generation. Let's get started. Released in 1996, Star Trek First Contact was directed by Commander Riker himself, Jonathan Frakes. The story begins in the 24th century, as an alien race known as the Borg begin an invasion of the Federation. When Captain Picard is ordered to stay out of the coming battle due to his assimilation by the Borg 6 years earlier, he and the crew of the newly commissioned Starship Enterprise E head for Earth to join the fight. The Enterprise and the rest of the Federation fleet manage to destroy the Borg cube, but not before a sphere ship is launched towards Earth and travels back in time. When Picard discovers that the past has been altered and now Earth has been assimilated, he and the Enterprise crew follow the sphere back in time to stop the Borg from changing history. Despite the mixed critical response to Star Trek Generations in 1994, the film was a box office success, and a follow-up film was quickly ordered by Paramount Pictures. With the transitional first film for TNG out of the way, writers Ronald D. Moore and Brannon Braga set to work on a film that would focus exclusively on the Next Generation crew, and would be the first movie in the series not to have any members of the classic cast involved. Despite the fact that the TV series' final episode, All Good Things, and the Generations movie involved some type of time travel, producer Rick Berman wanted another time travel plot for the next movie. Moore and Braga, however, wanted to bring back the Borg, one of the most famous villains from the TV series. They all quickly decided that they could do both. Several story ideas were discussed, including one where the Borg travelled back in time to the 15th century Renaissance period and prevent the dawn of modern European civilization. It was Braga's idea, however, that the Borg would try to interfere with humanity's first contact with the Vulcans in the mid-21st century by preventing Zefram Cochrane's first warp flight. This would prevent, for lack of a better term, the birth of Star Trek. After several high-profile directors turned the project down, Jonathan Frakes, who played Commander Riker in TNG and who had directed several episodes of the show, as well as a few on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, was chosen to direct. This made the cast more comfortable as they were all very close to each other, and Frakes clearly understood what made Star Trek work. The Borg were introduced in the second season TNG episode titled Q Who, where the Enterprise was flown into a faraway region of space by the super being Q. Originally conceived as a race of insects, the Borg are part humanoid and part machine. They exist as mindless drones that are linked by a hive mind called the Collective, and travel through space in huge cube-shaped vessels. The Borg's objective is to assimilate all life and add them to their collective. After narrowly escaping their first encounter with the Borg in Q Who, the Enterprise faced them again in the classic third season finale episode, The Best of Both Worlds, one of the greatest cliffhanger episodes in television history. Captain Picard was assimilated and helped destroy most of the Federation fleet. After being rescued by the crew, the Borg ship was defeated and Picard recovered. While the Borg were never seen again in full force for the rest of the series, there was the occasional episode which implied that Picard was still traumatized by the event. In First Contact, the Borg go back in time to prevent Zefram Cochrane's first warp flight. Cochrane is a pivotal character in the Star Trek timeline, as he is the one who invented warp drive. The character first appeared in the Star Trek original series episode Metamorphosis and was played by Glenn Corbett. Cochrane was found alive after being presumed dead on a planet in deep space by Captain Kirk and his crew. Cochrane had been kept alive by an alien called the Companion. Cochrane in this story is depicted as being patriotic and wise. In First Contact, Cochrane is played by James Cromwell and is depicted as being selfish and an alcoholic. Watching the movie, I find it hard to believe that this is the same character played by Corbett in the original series. Then again, according to a 1997 interview with Sci-Fi Universe magazine, screenwriter Brannon Braga had never watched the original series growing up. And when he heard someone suggest the character of Zefram Cochrane, he said, "That should be Picard's love interest." He didn't know it was a guy. Looking to broaden the appeal of Star Trek beyond its core audience, Rick Berman and the screenwriters looked past Star Trek movies for inspiration, particularly The Voyage Home, as that had been, up to that time, the most successful film in the series. Part of the reason for that film's success, it was believed, was that it appealed to those who usually wouldn't watch Star Trek. The character of Gillian Taylor in that film was an audience stand-in for those who didn't understand or know about Trek. And in First Contact, the character of Lily Sloan, played by Alfre Woodard, fulfills that role. She has a close relationship with Picard that grows during the film and helps steer him off his self-destructive path of fighting the Borg no matter what the cost. The Borg's use of time travel to attack Earth in the past is one of the biggest plot holes in the film. After travelling all the way to Earth and engaging the Federation fleet in combat, they launched their time ship only after their cube ship was destroyed, and only then decide to travel back in time. This really doesn't make sense. If they had this technology all along, they could have just travelled back in time from their homeworld, and Starfleet would have been none the wiser. Time travel can't just be pulled out of the air without any sense or context, just because it's science fiction. During the movie, Captain Picard gets more and more obsessed with getting revenge on the Borg, and goes down a self-destructive path, going so far as to shoot his own crew members to death rather than let them be assimilated, and even calling Worf a coward when he suggests abandoning the ship.
You're afraid. You want to destroy the ship and run away, you coward.
Obsession certainly isn't a new theme explored in Star Trek. Examples of this include the original series episode Obsession, as Kirk goes dangerously out of control in trying to get revenge on a creature that killed a crew he was part of 10 years previously. Also, Captain Janeway in the Voyager episode Equinox, as she gets more and more obsessed with taking down the renegade Captain Ransom, and Captain Sisko in pretty much every Deep Space Nine episode involving Michael Eddington. Picard's character arc in this film is actually not too unlike Khan Noonien Singh in Star Trek II. In that movie, Khan was obsessed with getting revenge on Captain Kirk for stranding him on Ceti Alpha 5 15 years earlier. Khan often quoted Herman Melville's Moby Dick, and shares a similar fate to the main character of that book, Captain Ahab. Picard goes on a similar journey in First Contact, and to drive the point home, Lily pretty much spells it out for him in the best scene of the movie.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt your little quest. Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale.
What?
You do have books in the 24th century.
In a way, this movie could have been called The Wrath of Picard. Unlike Khan, however, Picard eventually realises the self-destructive path he's on. Interestingly, Patrick Stewart actually played Captain Ahab 2 years later in a TV miniseries of Moby Dick. First Contact is the closest Star Trek comes to being a full-on horror movie. After their sphere ship is destroyed, the Borg beam over to the Enterprise and start assimilating the ship and its crew deck by deck. Just as the Klingons got an upgrade in their alien design from the original series to the movies, the Borg get the same treatment. While in the Next Generation TV series their appearance consisted of pale makeup and black leotards, in First Contact their appearance is more monstrous, looking like zombies that have been taken over from the inside out rather than the outside in. There's also more variety in terms of the aliens that have been assimilated, such as Klingons and Bolians. The first big encounter with the Borg on the ship, as Picard and his crew try to get through a Borg hive to reach engineering, always reminds me of a similar scene in James Cameron's Aliens. Jonathan Frakes is on record as saying that he viewed movies like Steven Spielberg's Jaws, Ridley Scott's Alien, and Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey to prepare for the film. This scene in particular is one of the most violent and intense scenes of any Star Trek film. While in the TV series, it was only hinted at as to the actual process the Borg used to assimilate people, here it's shown in fairly graphic detail. After the destruction of the Enterprise D in Generations, Picard and the crew get a brand new Enterprise in First Contact. While the Enterprise D was created specifically for the TV series and reflected Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's peaceful, utopian vision of the future, with its almost luxury hotel-like interiors, as well as having families, including children aboard, the Enterprise E reflected the more militaristic era the franchise was in during the mid-90s. On TV, Deep Space Nine showed a Starfleet that was heading for all-out war with the Dominion, and this design, designated the Sovereign class, reflected that. This Enterprise looked more like a warship than an exploration vessel, with its dark interiors, hard edges, and more submarine-like feel. The uniforms also get a major redesign that suggests a more military identity for Starfleet, and unlike in the last movie, they stay consistent. The writers make much better use of Data and his motion chip than in Generations. In this movie, Data can switch his emotion chip off at will and becomes a major part of the story, particularly in his scenes with the Borg Queen. The Borg Queen wasn't featured in the TV series and was created here specifically for the film. While previously the Borg were seen not as individuals, but as a unified collective, the writers wanted a villain that the main characters could interact with. They ultimately decided that since the Borg were very hive-like, there should be a Queen Bee, so to speak. The Borg Queen was played by Alice Krieg. This was a difficult part to cast as the actress chosen had to be scary and mysterious, but also have a dark sexual appeal. Frakes cast Krieg after finding she possessed all these qualities, and was impressed by her performance in the 1981 film Ghost Story. Krieg gives a very good performance here, and to this day is still the only female main villain in a Star Trek movie. Despite her small size, she's extremely intimidating, and even has a dark sense of humour.
Was that good for you?
My own personal opinion is that even though the Queen is interesting, what made the Borg so scary originally was that they were just this huge, unstoppable force that kept on coming and were impossible to be reasoned with. The Queen ends up sounding like a Bond villain after a while. While Picard and the crew battle the Borg on the Enterprise, down below on Earth, Riker, Troy and Geordi help Cochrane launch his warp flight in time to make his historic meeting with the Vulcans. This whole subplot is really an excuse for a series of lightly comedic scenes to break up the tension of the main Borg plot, and it's a bit hit and miss really. The crew pretty much give Cochrane massive spoilers as to what's going to happen in the future, and seem to have no problem giving him this information. Haven't you ever seen Back to the Future? I would have liked this whole plot better if Riker, Geordi and Troy had helped Cochrane in a subtle way, and without letting him know that they were from the future. Instead we get some lame comedy gags like Troy getting drunk. These scenes are relatively short however, and don't really distract too much attention from the main plot up on the Enterprise. This movie had more action than any Star Trek film up to this point. The opening space battle is terrific, as well as the fight with the drones on Deck 16, but the big action highlight is the deflector dish sequence. The Borg start building a beacon outside the ship to signal reinforcements from the collective living in the 21st century, and Picard, Worf and Lieutenant Hawk in spacesuits attempt to shut the beacon down. This is an extremely well filmed and very tense sequence, with Picard and his men trying to avoid the Borg, not waste the very few effective phaser shots they have before the Borg adapt. I especially like the bit where Worf ditches his rifle after it becomes useless and switches to using a mini bat'leth he's got tucked away. Interestingly, they used a one-armed actor to depict the Borg drone that got its arm cut off. I've always thought there was a very 2001 A Space Odyssey feel to this sequence, which Jonathan Frakes admits to in his audio commentary. Frakes' commentary, by the way, is one of the best I've ever listened to. Not only does it give a lot of information and trivia about the making of the film, but he's extremely entertaining and tells quite a few jokes. Well worth a listen. Jerry Goldsmith returned here to score his third Star Trek film, after having previously worked on the motion picture and The Final Frontier. Goldsmith was at the time working on The Ghost in the Darkness, and delays in that film meant he had less time to devote to First Contact. As a result of this, Goldsmith brought on his son Joel, an acclaimed composer in his own right, to help score the film. The younger Goldsmith scored a lot of the action scenes, using his father's themes. I especially love how Goldsmith turned his Klingon theme, established in the motion picture, which was really a villain theme, into a hero theme for Worf. I have to say, even though I really like Goldsmith's score to this film, it's my least favourite of all the ones he did. I think if he had more time to devote to the film, it would have been even better. His First Contact theme is absolutely beautiful though. Despite the presence of the Borg in this film, Goldsmith opens the movie with his inspiring First Contact theme. This is a technique Goldsmith used before in films such as 1979's Alien and 1981's First Blood. He contrasts the horror and carnage in these films with beautiful, peaceful themes to lull audiences into a false sense of security. It's very effective and demonstrates Goldsmith's skill as a storyteller as much as a composer. Overall, First Contact is, in my opinion, the most satisfying of the Next Generation Star Trek films. It moves at a terrific pace and has some of the best action and special effects of the entire series. It corrects some of the mistakes in the previous film, and it's one of the few movies in the series that anyone can enjoy. You don't need to have seen any Star Trek before watching this film, as it works as a standalone story. By the way, this movie has a sequel of sorts, in the form of the Star Trek Enterprise episode, Regeneration. That story involves Borg drones breaking out of the wreckage of the sphere that Picard shot down in the beginning of First Contact. It's the only time that particular show would involve the Borg, and it's very much a one-off, but it's well worth watching. To make a video game term, it's kind of like additional downloadable content after finishing the main quest. It's not entirely necessary, but fun to experience. As for the Next Generation, they will return 2 years later for their third feature film, Star Trek Insurrection. And that's the movie I'll be taking a look at next time in this series. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, click the bell for notifications, and let me know in the comments what's your favourite scene in First Contact. I hope you all look after yourselves, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye for now.